Hi, you're about to watch a message that was filmed live at Grace Family Church.
At Grace, we say, come as you are. Our mission is to love God, love people, and make a difference. Whenever you're watching this, whatever time, we'd like you to be encouraged about the message that you're about to watch that is coming up next.
He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." Have you ever prayed a prayer like Elijah did? Perhaps you've prayed it today. Disappointments, missed opportunities, and broken dreams. They leave us feeling tired, overwhelmed, uncertain, and disillusioned. We all experience these moments in life where everything feels too much, and we find ourselves on our knees saying, "Enough now." So where do we find the strength to keep going?
Hey, I'm delighted that you've joined us today. Thanks, Tom and Jess. Thanks to Karen and the team who've just led us in this time together. But I wish I could see you sitting on your couch, lying in your bed, grabbing your coffee, because in a sense, it's me and you as we talk to each other today. So I'm delighted you're here. Enough now. I don't know if you have found yourself saying that. And my sense is we start saying enough now when the pressure from without is greater than the resource that we have within us. Maybe it's true also when we simply perceive the pressure from without is greater than the perceived capacity within. It's like we're being squeezed and we're tapping out, as it were. The demands of life, of work, of family, and finance are simply far more than our ability to meet them or if we think we can meet them. So we say enough now. Any more and something's going to break. Now, COVID-19 and lockdown have simply added an enormous pressure from without. I don't know about you. But at the same time, this lockdown and all that goes with it has limited and is limiting our capacity to build strength from within and to respond. And so we say, enough now. So in the series entitled Enough Now, we track 3 events in the life of Elijah, who was a human being just like us, who had run out of internal resource, was short on courage, and indeed was shouting loudly, "Enough now." He had come off a massive victory and an adrenaline high, and now he felt more vulnerable than ever. And there's a vulnerability that comes from the adrenaline highs of a win. He discovered that there are no permanent victories. He was disgusted at the fickleness of the people who had cheered him on at Mount Carmel and then turned to follow his enemy, his foe. Queen Jezebel was a powerful, powerful woman. She had threatened him with his life. He said, "Just like you've wiped out my people, I'm going to wipe you out, Elijah." No small threat. God, in fact, seems, according to Elijah, had led him into a crisis and then deserted him, set him up with a victory and then bailed. Enough is enough. So depressed and frightened, he's on the run. He ran. And he ran into the desert. This is what he says, "I've had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died." That's quite a prayer. Just kill me now, God. Here's the beautiful thing. Instead of a lecture, he gets lunch. Rather than a motivational speech from God, he gets a meal. As Tom pointed us to last week, God invites Elijah in this place of despair, crying out, "Enough now, kill me now, God." He invites Elijah to eat, sleep, and move. These are 3 things that restore our capacity within. More than that, though, is that God met him in the desert, watched him while he slept, provided the bread to eat, and a hand to lift him up. God was present. Wasn't it great last week to share in communion at each of our campuses? Bread broken, blood shed, a life offered for you and me, a sacrament, an outward sign of the reality of God's presence and provision. I pray that you were encouraged wherever you shared in that communion. But friends, now strengthened by the food and the sleep, Elijah is running again. And he's running far. He's running away, and he's running far, and he's running to Mount Horeb, or also known as Mount Sinai. And from Beersheba, where he was in Judah, to Mount Sinai, Horeb, it's 435 kilometers. That's the journey he takes. And what I love about it is you can Google it. Go to Google Beersheba to Mount Sinai, and it's going to show you the path. These are real places. This is not Middle Earth somewhere imaginary, but in fact, it is a real place. Elijah, 40 days, 40 nights, 435 kilometers. He's running to Horeb. It seems he's looking for God. He's trying to find God. Amazing things happened at Mount Horeb. God speaks to Moses through the burning bush. Moses strikes a rock at Mount Horeb, and water gushes out, providing sustenance for the people. The 10 Commandments are delivered to Moses at Mount Horeb and Sinai. The Israelite people head out for Canaan, the promised land, from this place. It seems that Elijah, short on courage, is just wanting to see God, hear from God, and get direction from God. Maybe you're like that. But Elijah's running away to a place where God seemed to act. When he got there, so the writer writes, when he got there, he crawled into a cave and he went to sleep. Other translations say he lodged there. And the word lodged kind of implies for me, he got stuck. He crawled into a cave and he lodged there. He got stuck. He suffered from cave mentality, small space thinking. It's what we're doing in our world of lockdown. I'm told a trend that's going to stick for us is we are going to cocoon. So we're just going to lock ourselves down and more stay at home. Both Elijah's mind and his heart had gone into hiding. He was free from Queen Jezebel, 435 kilometers away, but he was a prisoner of himself. He had shut out the sunlight out of his mind. He had drawn the shutters of his heart. He had crawled into a cave and he went to sleep. I don't know if you've been there. Maybe you're there now. Maybe you're short on courage. The resource inside of you is not enough. Enough now is the cry of your heart and of your mind. And perhaps you've crawled into a cave, a small space where vision dies. A cave perhaps of bitterness, maybe deep disappointment, sense of loss and anger and deep sadness. Maybe you're in the cave. You know, the Hebrew people had a dread of being hemmed in, perhaps coming from years and years of slavery. What God does with them so often is to lead them into wide open spaces, as the psalmist exclaims in Psalm 118. I called upon the Lord in distress. I was locked down, I was hurt, I was sad, I was broken. The Lord answered me, and he set me in a large place. Now Elijah had crawled into a small space, and he's lodged there. What does God do and say to Elijah and to us? What does God say to you and me when we're stuck like that? Well, let's read on. Then the word of God came to him. So Elijah, what are you doing here? I don't know about you. Now, this question just irritates me. Is it, what are you doing here in this cave? And I would imagine Elijah saying, sleeping, Lord, and licking my wounds. Is the question, what are you doing here, kind of a deep existential question of purpose? Like, what are you doing on earth, Elijah? Running for my life, he says. But I don't know, if I've crawled into a cave, this is not the discussion I really want to get into. Am I right? Well, listen to Elijah's response. I've been working my heart out for the God of the angel armies, said Elijah. The people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed the places of worship, and murdered your prophets. We're in trouble, and I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me. This is what happened. Then he was told, go and stand in the on the mountain at attention before God. God will pass you by. A hurricane wind And Jess was talking about the wind. A hurricane wind ripped through the mountains and shattered the rocks before God. But God wasn't to be found in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire, but God wasn't in the fire. And after the fire, a gentle and a quiet whisper. When Elijah heard the quiet voice, he muffled his face with his great cloak, went to the mouth of the cave, and stood there. A quiet voice asked, "So Elijah, now tell me, what are you doing here?" Elijah said it again. It's kind of rehearsed. "I've been working my heart out for God, the God of the angel armies, because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed your places of worship, and murdered your prophets. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." Friends, it seems that Elijah suffered from the Tomati effect. More than a century ago, a French doctor, Alfred Tomati, and I think I've got it right, Guy Begard will correct me afterwards, was confronted by the most curious case of his life career as an otolaryngologist. Get that around your throat. A renowned opera singer had lost his capacity to hit certain notes, even though these notes were well within his range. Ear, nose, and throat specialists had diagnosed this as a vocal problem, but Dr. Tomati thought very otherwise. Using a sonometer, he discovered that even an average opera singer produces 140 decibel sound waves at 1 meter. Now, that means nothing to you, but this is slightly louder than a jet taking off from an aircraft carrier, and the sound is even louder in your own skull. How's that? When I read that, I remembered my father's snoring. He frightened small children in the middle of the night. Our friends slept over but wanted to leave in the middle of the night. So loud was the sound. That discovery led to the diagnosis that the opera singer had been deafened by the sound of his own voice. How's that? Selective muteness was caused by selective deafness. If you can't hear a note, you can't sing that note. And Elijah had been deafened by his own voice. Twice he is asked, and twice he answered. And in a sense, he's saying, "I've worked hard for you, God. I deserve more than this. Everyone around me is corrupt and has given up on you." Maybe you found yourself saying that. Everyone else around me is corrupt. I'm alone, the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me. What am I doing here? I'm hiding. I'm escaping. I'm sleeping. I'm giving up. Enough now. He's deafened by his own self-speak. Now, I'm not sure how you answer the whispered question, what are you doing here? I'm guessing you, like me, have your fair share of problems and challenges inside and outside of you. And your problem-solving techniques might be as effective as mine. Maybe that's because we're treating symptoms while ignoring the root cause. A spiritual Tomati effect, if you like. Is it possible that we perceive to be what we perceive to be relational, emotional, and spiritual challenges are actually hearing problems? Ears that have been deafened to the voice of God. And it's that inability to hear His voice that causes us to lose our voice and lose our way. Learning how to hear the voice of God is perhaps the solution to thousands of challenges. It's the way in which we restore the resource within us. It's also the key to discovering our destiny and our potential. You see, God's voice is love. God's voice is power. God's voice is healing. God's voice is wisdom. God's voice is joy. And if your life is off key, if my life is off key, maybe it's because we've been deafened by the negative self-speak that doesn't let God get a word in edgeways. Maybe you've listened to the voice of criticism so long you can't believe anything else about yourself. Or maybe it's the voice of condemnation that speaks lies about who you really are, and you now believe it. It's rung around your head for so long at decibels beyond your capacity to ignore. Maybe the circumstance of your life sounds like wind and earthquake and fire. And Michelle and I were in Welkom when a tornado ripped through the place, tore roofs off, left houses 1 meter, the highest wall 1 meter off the ground, wrapped cars around street poles and plonked them in trees. We know what the power of all of that is. Maybe the circumstance of your life sounds like wind and earthquake and fire, and God's not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire. God's far away. Friends, if we don't silence those compelling voices, they'll eventually deafen us. We won't be able to sing God's song because we won't be able to hear God's voice. Elijah's told to go outside, for God is about to pass by. Now, interesting, Elijah doesn't move, it seems. The earthquake doesn't move him. The wind doesn't get him up. The fire doesn't stir him. The gentle whisper does. Translated as a low whisper, or a gentle blowing, or in the King James, a still small voice. The Hebrew word for whisper is demama, and can be translated as silence or stillness or calmness. The same Hebrew word is used to describe the way God delivers us from distress. The psalmist writes, He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. And that psalm foreshadows the way Jesus would stop a storm in the tracks with 3 words: quiet, be still. His whisper is gentle, but nothing is more powerful. A whisper is defined as speaking very softly, using one's breath without one's vocal cords. The use of breath instead of vocal cords is significant. Isn't that how God created Adam? He whispered into the dust and named it Adam. Adam was only once a whisper, so were you, so was I, so was everything. No form of communication is more intimate than a whisper. God has an outside voice, but it seems to be God's preferred method of communication, the whisper. When someone speaks in a whisper, you have to get very close to hear. In fact, you have to put your ear near the person's mouth. We lean towards a whisper, and that's what God wants. The goal of hearing the Heavenly Father's voice isn't just hearing His voice, it's intimacy with Him. That's why He speaks in a whisper. He wants to be as close to us as is divinely possible. He loves us. He likes us that much. When our children were young, and now they are not so young anymore, I would occasionally play a little trick on them, and it's hardly a trick, they knew what was coming. I'd speak in a whisper, so they would come a little closer. I would say, I want to tell you a secret, in the quietest whisper. And as they got close, that's when I'd grab them and hug them and whisper the secret. I love you. They knew what was coming, but they came anyway. You see, it's intimacy. It's closeness. God plays the same trick on us, it seems. We want to hear what He has to say, but He wants us to know how much He loves us. So as Elijah comes close, wind and earthquake and fire had not moved him. He wraps his cloak around his face and he stands at the door of this small space he had crawled into and been lodged. As Elijah comes close and listens, God is so clear. You can read it in 1 Kings 19. He says, go back the way you came. You're not the only one. There are good people waiting for you. Anoint Hazael, king of Aram. Anoint Jehu, king of Israel. Anoint Elisha as your successor. And by the way, Elijah, you're not alone. There are 7,000 others who, like you, have not abandoned me. God gets Elijah out of the cave with a whisper. I sense God encourages Elijah, restores the resource within him. God reconnects Elijah with others with a whisper. And if you're not part of a small group here at Grace, if you want to know how to be restored, it seems that God says to Elijah, listen to my voice and come close to me. I love you. Now connect with others. There are others. God restores Elijah's courage with a whisper and a reconnection. Elijah, go back where you've come from. There are people who are with you. You're not alone. It seems God often speaks loudest when we're quietest. 7th century French philosopher Blaise Pascal once observed, the sole cause of a man's unhappiness, I would suggest of a woman's also, is that he or she does not know how to stay quietly in his room. That's quite a statement. But it's not an overstatement. If our problems are hearing problems, the spiritual Tomati effect, then the solution to these problems is a prescription that is as old as the Psalms. Be still. Be still and know that I am God. I'm not sure what lightning, earthquake, and fire is happening in your life. I'm not sure what noise crashes around you. I'm not sure what cave you may have crawled into and you have lodged there. I'm not sure if you have been deafened by your own voice, your own self-speak, and you have repeated it so often. Excuse me. You've said it so often that you can hear nothing else. So I want to make one invitation this week, and I know even as I make it that it can be so easily ignored. In fact, the bias will be to ignore it. But here's the invitation, just one. Be still. Carve out 10 minutes of every day this week. Find a place where you won't be interrupted. And be still. Listen for the whisper of God. And my faith is in God here. I would love to be able to tell you what God says to you, sitting there wherever you might be. But I'm not that wise. My faith is in God. Be still and listen for the whisper of God. Some may say, I don't believe that there is a God. To you I say, be still anyway. Listen and write down what you hear. 7 days, 70 minutes. I have no doubt that God will restore, reconnect, and encourage. Whatever you hear, you're going to hear something like, think back a little. Look who's around you. Reconnect with others. Rediscover the resource in you. Come out of the cave. Don't lodge there. There are others like you and you're not alone. But why not be still and listen? I'd love to hear by email or by message or by whatever what you hear God say. But be still. Karen will sing a song for us now. In the quiet are the words, in the quiet, in the stillness, I know that you are God. In the secret of your presence, I know there I am restored. The temptation for some right now, as we practice just being still for a moment, is now's the time for coffee. Now's the time to get up. Now's the time to get on with my day. And I just want to stop you in your tracks. Hey, sit down. Be still. Who knows what God has to say to you? Who knows? So listen with me as Karen sings. She fills this space with a song which seems counterintuitive. It's not still. But the words draw us to stillness. So listen to Karen. But more so, listen for the whisper of God. And as we listen together, let it be the first moment of our commitment simply to be still. So Karen, thank you as you lead us now in holy things. And I'm trusting that the God of the heavens armies, who has an outside voice, will speak to you in his inside voice with a whisper. Will draw you close. You'll sense his love and his presence, and you'll hear his voice. Let's listen together.
I hope that you were encouraged by that message from Wayne and encouraged to find stillness in your world, even if it is a bit chaotic. Can I just encourage you to share this video? I know it's a message that spoke to us, and so if it spoke to you, share it. Share it onto your social media platforms. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you hit that bell notification so that you can keep up to date with what's going on.
One of the ways you can partner with the mission that we do here at Grace is through giving. Your generosity goes far beyond the four walls of our church. So if you like to give towards the mission, please go to our website at grace.org.za/forward-give.
That's exactly it. If you're feeling a little disconnected, and that's a big part of our world right now, if you're feeling a little disconnected and you're wanting to find a place to belong, why not find a group at Grace? We have groups that are meeting online and groups that are meeting in physical locations around our city. So head over to our website, that's grace.org.za/connect. So thank you for joining us. I hope that message encouraged you and strengthened you for the week ahead. Cheers.